So, welcome everyone. Tonight we have a very special virtual program called The Legacy of the Tanner Family, Revitalizing the Henry Ossawa Tanner House. Our guest is Christopher Rogers, and at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Assistant Curator Abby Lua, who will do the honor of introductions.
Thank you, Jen. So before we dive into the presentation, I just have a short introduction for our speaker tonight. And so our speaker is Christopher Rogers. He is an educator, cultural worker from Chester, Pennsylvania. With more than a decade of experience in supporting justice-oriented arts, culture, and community in the greater Philadelphia area, he founded We Win From Within in June 2023, which offers consulting, facilitation, and grant writing services to activist artists, community groups, and nonprofit organizations. He currently co-coordinates the Friends of the Tanner House, incubating a revitalized Henry Ossawa Tanner House as the intersection of Black heritage preservation and community cultural organizing. As a facilitator with the W.E.B. Du Bois Movement School for Abolition and Reconstruction, he supports aspiring movement leaders serving communities most impacted by poverty, policing, and mass incarceration. He has previously served in key roles with National Black Lives Matter at School, Paul Robeson House and Museum, West Philadelphia Cultural Alliance, Philadelphia Student Union, Teaching Action Group Philadelphia, and more. To top it all off, he is also currently visiting assistant professor of the writing program at Haverford College. And so without further ado, please join me in welcoming Chris Rogers.
Yes, thank you. I'm really grateful to be here with you all this evening. I just want to thank the Michener for inviting me. I was able to visit the exhibition pretty early after there was launch and was grateful to be there with the family. Um, and just to see the amazing community of artists and art lovers that I know Lewis, just spent his life around. And grateful to have, known Lewis as well. And kind of, this was my first time, sort of like engaging in a full exhibition of his work, and such a beautiful and just diverse display of um, incredible artwork that tells and interrogates like such a critical part of Black experience, um, not just here either. You know what I mean? But across diaspora. So I just am grateful to have this presentation be in part of the programming while this exhibition is up. We're still sort of like in the throes of figuring out how we as we go into the summer camp world. And I think there's up for another month or so to figure out, hey, how can we get more folks from Philadelphia and more of the young folks in North Philly, where we're at, to get up to the Michener. Um, so we're figuring that whole process out. We'll see what we can do. It's always, a busy time. So I'm really grateful to be here tonight and share some stories about our unfolding, and I mean that, unfolding research on the Tanner family legacy. We are a couple years into working on the Henry Ossawa Tanner House, which we hope to become the Tanner Family House, located at 2908 West Diamond Street in Strawberry Mansion, North Philadelphia. Um, uh, and there is so much to learn about the legacies, accomplishments, and contributions. Um, and just like the everyday choices and work and study that goes into the lives that we now herald today as part of the Tanner family legacy. So we're still on the front end of figuring these things out, but tonight I'm going to be able to share a little bit about what we've been learning, and who some of those figures are. So I have a slideshow. I'm working on possibly an opportunity to be able to share the slides with you all. I do have a bit of a short link that I think may work. Um, all right. So let's see. So I'm gonna put this in the chat, and I don't know if this is going to reach folks. But as I get this slideshow going, you should be able to see the screen. So I don't know if that chat's gonna reach to y'all, but if you can, that bit.ly link, bit.ly/Tanner HSP. I am an educator. I come out of working in schools. Also a fan of, accessibility. Um, all the information here that we're going to be presenting is in these slides. If you want to go back to anything, look through anything, that's what this is for. Yeah, you don't got to post it, across the internet, but if you want to share with somebody privately, be my guest. It's all part of the work that we're doing as lifting up the Tanner family legacy in North Philadelphia. And we want as many people as possible to engage with these stories and these histories. So as we started, oh, it says pause. Can you see it? Can they see it? It
Yeah.
is available? Okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I put it in the chat, so some people have been able to click it and log on. See
Okay,
the
it says I am screen sharing. Then it says my screen sharing is paused. What is going on? Okay, let me try this one more time. No. Ah, okay. I think I see what's happening here. Sorry about this, y'all. There we go. I believe this is more complete. So the house that we are working and endeavoring to recover, this is how we first met or first came as the Friends of the Tanner House into understanding the story of this National Historic Landmark, 2908 West Diamond Street. Um, which is located in the Strawberry Mansion section of North Philadelphia. Right next to, on the right hand side, you see Mount Lebanon Baptist Church. This row home was built in 1872 and purchased by Henry Ossawa Tanner's father, Benjamin Tucker Tanner, in the same year. Um, it did not become a National Historic Landmark until 1976, part of the bicentennial efforts, in particular, the work of the Afro American Bicentennial Corporation, the DeForest brothers, who at that time were organizing to ensure that a more diverse representation of this country's heritage would be platformed and preserved during the year of the bicentennial. And as we come into the year of 2026, which is 250 years of this American project, I think that we are also struggling through much of the same. And it's interesting that at the time that we are working on, you know, saving and recovering and revitalizing this property, that some of those same sort of like, cycles of a lack of representation, a lack of diversity, these are things that Lewis Tanner Moore himself spoke incredibly about, the need for us to represent and speak more and lift up voices who we haven't heard. Um, it's interesting that we're on the precipice of making this a premier project for 2026. So we came into the house. It was, as you can see, there's a L&I sticker on the window. It was deemed an unsafe structure. It was no longer owned by the Tanners at the point, sold it to the Thornton family. We're now working with the Thornton family on the recovery and acquisition of this property. But we know we needed to stabilize it. There was a hole in the roof. Water was coming through and rotting pretty much all the joists of this 1872 built row home. And if we didn't get there and possibly get started in the time that we did, we didn't think that this house was going to make it. But we stabilized it. Now it's been waterproofed. We've installed a new roof. We even installed a whole new back wall as we prepare for a sort of revitalization effort and working on bringing on an architecture and design group this summer who's going to help us envision and bring to the fore what our vision for the revitalized Tanner House will be. So I'm just really excited about this work. Friends of the Tanner House got a start in late 2021, a bit of fundraising in 2022, some big wins in 2023, and it's really just allowed us to get to this moment. And there's so much more to come. So talk about 2023. Um, I had a conversation with Lewis probably even before then in 2022. Um, but in June of 2023, we held a pretty landmark fundraiser at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. Folks may know it's where Henry Ossawa Tanner went to school, his arts background. Right behind Dr. Ray Alexander Mentor is Eric Pryor, who was the president of PAFA at the time. And through a fundraiser that we hosted there, we were able to kind of move into the opportunity to begin work, to close up that roof, to get the water out of the house, to be able to stabilize the property. And I just, a huge moment, like a gratitude for these Tanner family descendants, Lewis Tanner Moore Jr., Dr. Ray Alexander Mentor, who are on the front end of welcoming our project um, to the Tanner family, being folks who have helped us connect with the history, who help us sort of like think about the different facets of the stories to move, beyond just Henry Ossawa Tanner into thinking of the vast legacy of the Tanner family. And we just are incredibly indebted to them and continue to do uh, this work uh, with their, with them at the table. And I still check in with Dr. Ray Alexander Mentor. Um, and always, I was just talking to Leslie Tanner Moore earlier today. Um, so thank you. And, um, as we go into these stories, much of them are colored by what they have shared with me. Oh, and then, of course, our website, savethetannerhouse.org. Please visit at any time. Um, Learn about our projects. We probably should update it more. If you go to our Instagram, Tanner House Friends, you can see more there. But we're working on it, and we'll keep some things going. And then breadcrumbs are there too. So we finished up a huge report about the house in August of 2024. And one of the things that Dr. Ray Alexander Mentor left with us was that the formidable historian Dr. Carter G. Woodson once described Bishop Tanner's home, the home that we're working on, Henry Ossawa Tanner House, 2908 West Diamond Street, as the center of the African American intellectual community of Philadelphia and the Northeast United States. Her words is, the Friends of the Tanner House sits on the precipice of a momentous historic moment. They have valiantly awakened our knowledge of the material culture of North Philadelphia and the restoration of the home of the Tanner family. I view the Friends of the Tanner House as a beacon to further the ancestors' work. And this, call in this way of uplifting our work, thinking just beyond the fact that the work that we do is more than sort of like mere brick and mortar preservation. It's more than just the preservation of a building, but how do we preserve these sort of Black historical legacies of struggle, of accomplishment, of creativity, of invention, of beauty? How do we keep that legacy alive? Is deeply, and important to us and the work that we do about how we pass those things on. So, and how we frame the work of the Tanner House, which is certainly here to recover the history of the Tanner family, right? But it's also forward facing, it's also community facing, it's also neighborhood facing, as this wonderful drone image of us situated, in North Philadelphia, but looking out onto the rest of the Philadelphia sort of like skyscape. Um, the work that we commit ourselves to follows in this hopeful blueprint, set by the family, recognizing the trailblazing Tanner family as humble possibility models, reflecting the vast ambitions of current and future generations of North Philadelphia, to grasp that we hold what's necessary inside of us to transform the world. So, how do we talk about the sort of pursuits that the Tanner family engaged in and use those as opportunities to awaken a whole new generation of folks to those legacies? But it begins with a bit of study. So this is the 1890 Tanner family photo. At the center is Bishop Benjamin Tucker Tanner. To his right, his wife, Sarah Elizabeth Miller Tanner. We have the oldest, Mr. Henry Ossawa Tanner up here. We have Haley Tanner Dillon Johnson, who I'll talk about as well. And I definitely have to give a shout out. This is Sarah Elizabeth Tanner, who eventually marries Louis Baxter Moore, becomes Sarah Elizabeth Tanner Moore. And this is Louis Tanner Moore's grandmother. Louis Baxter Moore, who she marries, is like the founder of the teaching college at Howard University. So it's the family's accomplishments and even who the marriages of the family are even is a lot. There's always a lot. Lift up also Mary Louise Tanner, who eventually becomes Mary Louise Tanner Mazel. She marries Aaron Mazel. This is Sadie's mother. And I love, the photograph is probably taken in Philadelphia. Yes, I believe so. So this is the sort of family photo that we use, and we're actually working on installing this outside the house pretty soon as a way to open up the neighborhood to engage with these legacies. But I'm going to kind of walk through some of their stories here, and I apologize because I won't be able to cover everyone. Just kind of picked out a couple different folks to begin with. And before, as we go there, I think, some of our early learning comes from this Tanner family tree, which is part of I believe there was an exhibition around Henry Ossawa Tanner in the early 90s. And Lewis gifted this to our organization. And this was a way of helping us sort of expand the narratives and talk about the many different accomplishments that are there. If you want to, in the Q&A, I can definitely pull up any of the specifics here and kind of do some zoom ins and zoom outs. But so we have to begin with the sort of Bishop Benjamin Tucker Tanner. I love what is this offering here from a biographer. He also doesn't perfectly fit the scripts we're told to expect from the main lines of American intellectual history. He was friends with Booker T. Washington, and he lectured at Tuskegee. But he was also one of the 18 members present with W.E.B. Du Bois at the founding of the American Negro Academy on March 5th, 1897. That person is not supposed to exist, but his name was Benjamin Tucker Tanner. There's even others that's not mentioned here. He worked with the Freedmen's Society, and Frederick Douglass would become a lead of that organization. Another someone who has a familiarity with the Tanner family. So like a lot of the sort of, overarching Black historical figures, Bishop Benjamin Tucker Tanner had a deep relationship with them, not just because his stature in Philadelphia, but also he ran the Christian Recorder, which was the newspaper of the AME Church. He also helped launch the AME Review, which is sort of like a deeper journal around a sort of theological insights of the AME Church. But the Christian Recorder, this newspaper, which covered the sort of expansion of the church, but as well as the historical struggle, the Black historical struggle. And he comes into an editorialship of that Christian Recorder in like 1870. This is in the middle of what is to be known as radical Reconstruction. AME Church is has a lot of movement and is building churches throughout the U.S. South. Like, what are the type of institutions that are being built to protect, defend, and advance Black freedom um, at a crucial time in this nation's history? He's covering that through this newspaper. Um, and we'll move to the matriarch of the family, who some will say the center of the family, and that's Sarah Elizabeth Miller Tanner. I have these two images. There are historical images that I could pull from Henry Ossawa Tanner's archive, that, photos, direct photos, but I thought these portraits were even, more of a touch, a sense of, personal and familial touch, um, that Henry Ossawa Tanner led around his mother. Sarah Elizabeth Miller Tanner, as a child, self-emancipated, or with the support of her mother, um, to escape slavery and a plantation in Virginia, via what we know to be what we call the Underground Railroad, the specific organization, the Pennsylvania Abolition Society. Um, and as we understand it, or as one of the stories go, um, the Sarah's mother, uh, who, you know, Sarah's mother bore children both to, and in her otherwise enslaved lover, on the plantation, but was also, um, to the slave master. 11 children. And the story goes that there was only 6 seats available, or 6 spaces available on this wagon, that would travel from Virginia up to Pennsylvania. And just think about that impossible choice, and there of, I only have space for 6 of my children to go on to see a freedom that I may not otherwise see. And I think the gift of that, or the legacy of that, of the paying forward, of of investing to create spaces of freedom that one might not otherwise have access to in their own lifetime, is something that you see as a incredible Tanner family legacy. Sarah makes it to Pennsylvania, settles in Carlisle for a minute, and then goes on to Pittsburgh. She graduates from Avery College, um, helped found one of the first societies for Black women, raises seven children with Bishop Benjamin Tucker Tanner. Uh, One of my favorite stories about her is, she also ran the Sunday school at Mother Bethel AME Church. And as I think about, like, the center of a church community, center of a church home, the folks who run the Sunday school get to see generations of that church come into being and have a sense of relationship and care for the many families. So I think about that sort of relational aspect and that sort of care and that caring touch that I can even feel through some of these paintings. Um, So what was, Henry Ossawa Tanner's childhood like? They were Henry Ossawa Tanner is born in Pittsburgh. Um, they don't move to Philadelphia until, 1868. There's records of them moving to Philadelphia. But they eventually get their own house in 1872. And this amazing, print, which is part of a children's book that was made for an exhibition at PAFA in the late 2000s, early 2010, like 2009, 2010, under the curator, Dr. Anna Marley. Um, this amazing thing put together by Faith Ringgold covers a significant moment in Henry Ossawa Tanner's life. Um, Henry, um, they lived at 29th and Diamond. And let's say the Fairmount Park starts at 33rd Street. So the idea of them walking through Fairmount Park, on a easy breezy day to just find space to be together. And Henry Ossawa Tanner actually writes about this. And if we have some time, I could pull up the direct quotes from him. But as the story goes, him and his father are walking through Fairmount Park. In some ways, they say his father wanted for Henry to work, the Industrial Revolution, to be part of the factories and find his way. But Henry was always would say he was sick, or he would have these different sicknesses and was like, my body's not built for that type of work. So as they're walking through Fairmount Park, they come upon a painter, and as faith sort of indicates here, it's becomes Henry, but they come upon a painter who's painting a landscape on the canvas in Fairmount Park, and Henry sort of looks to his father and says, "That's what I want to do. I want to become an artist." Um, Maybe at that time his father received that, um, but it wasn't his father who bought him his first paint kit. It was Sarah. Um, So uh we thank Sarah for following up on Henry's intentions there, and really give him a space for to have his first practice. And then what happens, in Henry chasing this dream, he goes on to become one of the most distinguished African American artists of the 19th century. Some would say the first artist of his race to achieve international acclaim. Yes, born in 1859 in Pittsburgh. The family moved to Diamond Street when he was 11. And there's a lot about Henry Ossawa Tanner's legacy, but there's some that we try to, lift up and focus on. The banjo lesson and the thankful poor. These are in some ways paired suite. This is at a time where Henry Ossawa Tanner is back in Philadelphia from Paris, and he's staying at 2908 Diamond Street. And these images, which represent at a time these a crucial, it's known to be African American genre paintings that are definitely stand against so much of the sort of mainstream media narratives and minstrelsy and mischaracterizations of Black humanity of the time. So the banjo lesson on the left is probably his most popularly reprinted image. And the Thankful Poor, as I just learned from Jen, is now newly reinstalled at the Met. We actually have worked with Mural Arts and the artist George A. Morton, and alongside some other mural arts muralists, where the Thankful Poor is now up on a wall at 29th and Dolphin Streets in North Philadelphia. But the sort of like the centerpiece of family and faith here, I think really says a lot. It also says a lot about Black creativity when you think about the music here. Um, and that it is something about a surviving impulse. I was thinking about the banjo lesson not too long ago. If anybody's seen Sinners from Ryan Coogler, and you think about the role of music, the role of Black music, I think the banjo lesson is saying something really powerful about that. But we can't just focus on Henry Ossawa Tanner, because we missed the opportunity to think about even his younger sister, Haley Tanner Dillon Johnson. So Haley Tanner Dillon Johnson, she graduated with honors from the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania, where she earned her MD in 1891, right? And then, as was previously mentioned, family friend Booker T. Washington, right, who has Tuskegee Institute, is looking to start in a nursing school. He visits Bishop and Haley at the home on 2908 West Diamond Street and invites her to say, I think we have an opportunity here. All you have to do is pass the exam. Um, and there's a journal or a correspondence that comes back from Haley after she passes the exam. And they tried to make the exam harder than it needed to be. And guess what? I still passed. Um, and so she's the first female physician of any race, to pass the Alabama State Medical Examination, the first woman physician at Tuskegee Institute, founding the nursing school. But she doesn't also stop there. She also founds a local dispensary that is meant to provide access to medicine to the local Black community who otherwise did not have healthcare access at the time. As you can see from the length of her life, she wasn't blessed to live a very long life. She did have a extremely impactful life, as we talked about. Um, Childbirth complications, and certainly there's a story there too about Black maternal health and a struggle that we're still working through today. Let's learn. Oh, well, I don't know if the audio is going to play through this, but let's see.
Tuskegee is a retired little town situated 40 miles east of Montgomery. So wrote Dr. Halle Tanner Dillon Johnson in a report on Tuskegee Institute's Lafayette Dispensary, a facility she helped establish. Despite the natural beauty of gentle sloping hills covered with grass, tall pines, and stately oaks, she also recognized the inequality of medical treatment there. She proceeded. In such an Eden as this are found many suffering with diseases brought on by non-observance of the laws of health. For this is a portion of the South known as the Black Belt, and black it is, not only with people of this despised hue, but black with disease and death. As Alabama's first licensed female, as well as its first African-American female physician, Halle Tanner Dillon Johnson contributed greatly in her post as physician for the Tuskegee Institute, as well as the rural Tuskegee community surrounding it. Halle Tanner Dillon Johnson was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on October 17, 1864. She entered the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia when she was 24. She was the only African-American student in her class. Upon graduation, the dean of her school connected her with Booker T. Washington, president of the prestigious Tuskegee Institute. She accepted the position and moved to Tuskegee in August 1891. Before beginning to practice, she had to pass the Alabama Certification Exam, a 10-day affair that had many of Alabama's most prominent white male physicians on the examination committee. By the end of it, these physicians granted certification to Dr. Johnson, praising her performance. From September 1st, 1891 until 1894, Dr. Johnson served at Tuskegee Institute. She also saw patients outside of the campus community, which spurred her determination to bring the Lafayette Dispensary to Tuskegee. This venture, which was sponsored by Northern Funding, helped provide services to more Black residents in the area. Dr. Halle Tanner Dillon Johnson died of dysentery and complications from childbirth on April 26, 1901 in Nashville, Tennessee. Indeed, I feel that Tuskegee ought to be the place where the vital statistics of the colored people can and will be studied with intelligence, she wrote. Her instincts came true. Her efforts on account of the rural Alabama medical community carried on in the programs of the Tuskegee Institute and characterized its contributions to African Americans not only in the South, but on the national level as well.
Thank you, and I hope for folks who may have access to the slides, send that video everywhere. Please do. So that's I'm speaking there about a generation. That's Henry's younger sister, but then there's also the story of Henry and Haley's niece, Sadie Tanner Mazel Alexander, who is their sister, Mary Louise's daughter. And she was, both born and raised at 2908 Diamond Street, at least through college. As you can, on the left, we see Sadie Tanner Mazel Alexander with her husband, Raymond Pace Alexander, who's also a force in his own right. And the legacy of Sadie T.M. Alexander is still very rich today. There's a conference that happens at the University of Pennsylvania. She was the first Black woman to graduate from the University of Pennsylvania's law school. She followed in the legacy of her father, Aaron Mazel, who was the first Black person to graduate from the University of Pennsylvania's law school. She became, and let's say this was after. This was, it's funny about that. This was after she had already graduated with a Ph.D. in economics, the first Black person to graduate with a Ph.D. in economics. And she ends up back in law school and gets the first Black person to get her JD. Becomes the first Black woman to be licensed as a to pass the bar in the state of Pennsylvania. The first Black woman licensed as a lawyer in the state of Pennsylvania. And then her and Raymond Pace will go on to lead one of the leading civil rights law firms in the region between the 1920s and the 1950s. He eventually goes on to be a common courts judge. It's a lot of his legacy as well. But Sadie T.M. Alexander in particular, I will say our mayor, Mayor Sherrill Parker of Philadelphia, is working right now. There's the finalists that are available and working on selecting a final artist that is going to develop a sculpture of Sadie T.M. Alexander that will be installed at Payne Plaza in Center City, Philadelphia. So like the legacy that it's a living legacy, and a lot. She's going to be one of the faces of Philadelphia pretty soon, in terms of that statue. And so shout out to Mayor Sherrill Parker, who was a project they sincerely believed in. They're working, with the Tanner family now on finalizing that. I do have a quick video about her too, and this is an excerpt. There's a book from Dr. Nina Banks, Democracy, Race, and Justice, which features a number of Sadie T.M. Alexander speeches and legacies. But I think as we kind of begin to close up and go and move for questions, I'll take about 2.5 minutes to just have us sort of engage with the life and legacy of Sadie Tanner Moselle Alexander.
My great-grandmother, Sadie Tanner Moselle, was born in 1898 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, into a highly accomplished African-American family. Her maternal grandfather, Benjamin Tanner, was bishop of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, and he and his wife, Sarah Elizabeth Tanner, had 7 children, including the renowned painter Henry Ossawa Tanner and Mary Louise Tanner Moselle, Sadie's mother. Her father was Aaron Moselle Jr., the first Black person to graduate from the law school at the University of Pennsylvania. However, he left his wife and 3 children when Sadie were just a year old. Her mother later moved the family to Washington, D.C. to live near her sister and brother-in-law, Louis Baxter Moore, a professor at Howard University. Young Sadie's family alternated between living in D.C. and living in Philadelphia. During high school, she lived in Washington, D.C. and attended the all-Black, well-regarded M Street High School, where she graduated in 1915. After high school, she moved back to Philadelphia at her mother's insistence to attend the University of Pennsylvania. While there, she experienced racial isolation from white classmates and discriminatory treatment. Her isolation lessened when she became close friends with fellow student Virginia Alexander and her brother Raymond Pace Alexander, while he was an undergraduate student at the Wharton School of Finance and Commerce. In 1918, my great-grandmother Sadie received a Bachelor of Science degree in education. The following year, in 1919, Sadie Moselle obtained a master's degree in economics, also from Penn. She also became the first national president of Delta Sigma Theta sorority after having been a charter member of the Gamma chapter at University of Pennsylvania. In the fall of 1919, she began doctoral studies at Penn and received a university scholarship in economics. With the recommendation of her economics professors, she later received the highly competitive Francis Sargent Pepper Fellowship.
I want to talk about her dissertation.
With the recommendation of her economics professors, she later received the highly competitive Francis Sargent Pepper Fellowship. Sadie Moselle wrote her dissertation, The Standard of Living Among 100 Negro Migrant Families in Philadelphia, in response to the early Great Migration of African Americans from the South to the North. The Great Migration was one of the largest voluntary internal migrations in U.S. history. 10% of the 400,000 Black people who left the South beginning in 1916 in response to increased demand for workers during World War I relocated to Philadelphia. Migrants hoped to build better lives for themselves and their children and wanted rights and freedoms they lacked in the South: voting rights, educational and job opportunities, higher wages, and justice in the courts of law. They also fled from Southern racial terror. However, the large and sudden increase in Philadelphia's Black population amplified racial tensions. White mob violence against African Americans in Philadelphia escalated into 4 days of mayhem in July 1918, as African Americans defended themselves against white attacks. By July 30th, city police had arrested some 60 Black residents, even though whites were the main instigators of the deadly clash. The Philadelphia attacks preceded the reign of racial terror that white Americans waged against African Americans throughout the nation in the Red Summer of 1919 in order to maintain white supremacy. 2 weeks before my great-grandmother earned a doctoral degree, white residents of Tulsa, Oklahoma burned down the most prosperous African American community in the country, the Greenwood District, by destroying 35 city blocks.
I'll pause here. I wanted to offer a bit about the dissertation because I think the context of Sadie's research, understanding the conditions, the challenges, the tensions, the supports needed for Black families in Philadelphia at the time, recognizing that they, in some ways, were part of a more secure, if you will, middle class, but also have a sense of responsibility to those who may have had less opportunity and access than them, is important for our work as an organization and helps us sort of ground ourselves. And I thank Brian for letting me know. I want to talk a little bit more about the organization and apologize because right now our donation link on our website needs to be updated. I remember reading about this, but I totally forgot to update it. So I'm sorry about that, but we'll definitely make sure that that information is updated pretty soon. But Friends of the Tanner House, as an organization, is committed to the preservation and growth of the rich Black cultural wealth of North Philadelphia, a neighborhood of which the Tanner family was part, and a community which continues to dream, evolve, and invent opportunities to thrive. I think one of the important things to note, I'll see what's after this slide. One of the important things to note here, right, is the tensions of our country's commitment to a status quo of race relations, a continued sort of legacy of the sort of like collective and cumulative injustices, is still very much so here today. And it's still very much so a struggle that there's the spectacular parts of it, the sort of moments of quote unquote like mob violence, as was mentioned in Tulsa. But there's also just like the everyday sorts of policies and education and healthcare and job access and environmental racism and that we also have to contend with. And I think that the work is on these multiple fronts. So the work that we do is thinking about the role of creativity, the role of history and creativity, and being able to confront some of these legacies. So one of the last things that I wrote, or I wrote for the report, was about the banjo lesson. In particular, the banjo, which is an African instrument, a West African instrument that was not brought, right? That could not have been brought on the slave ships, but had to be recreated throughout the Mississippi Delta, that reminded folks of back home. So the fact that you have a grandfather here who is sharing that with their child. It's not just about the music, it's not just about the instrument, but it's also about the history that the instrument represents. The banjo at the center of this painting, shared between the old and the young, suggests the continuance of an abundant Black blues tradition, of recognizing how the everyday creative power of Black music, or Black communities in general, is often maligned by overseers and outsiders as nothing but noise, serves as a communicative platform of secretive histories and ancestral survival guidance. The banjo lesson read in the key of Sankofa, which is a principle of the Akan people, which means to go back and fetch it, a recovery of history to advance the future, just might be otherwise rendered for us as a metaphorical tribute to the sharing of ancestrally rooted creative practices from one generation to the next that may help us get over, get by, and get clear once and for all that we as a people are unavailable for servitude. So this, this call, this way of understanding the role of Black creativity and the power that it represents in our community, the sort of historical legacies that it's connected to across the different spheres of our neighborhoods and social life, is what we do as an organization. So it's 7:50. I definitely wanted to have some time for Q&A and questions. Oh, thank you, Jen, for posting the link to the slides so folks can kind of continue to look at it and look through things on their own. What questions we got in the queue? Or Abby, what you thinking about?
Well, I'm just so inspired and floored by this presentation. Thank you so much for giving so many stories of all the family members. I had a question about more about the organization as well. I know that I think a lot of the early years have been towards stabilizing the house. I just wanted to hear more about what are the stated things, what are the team's visions for the organization with regards to programming as well. What can we look forward to?
Oh, this is great. Hold on. Give me a half a second. Because we'll go right to the source.
Oh, perfect.
So, as I mentioned, we are on Instagram. I think this is probably our most active space. I have left Twitter. I mean, it's up there. I just don't see no usefulness in being on that platform. But well, we're on Facebook as well. You can catch us on Facebook too. So the most recent thing we have upcoming is we are doing a very special haiku workshop in North Philadelphia on June 21st, which happens to be Henry Ossawa Tanner's 166th birthday. It is going to be facilitated by Philadelphia's one and only Ursula Rucker, someone who was just at the Roots picnic and performing with the Roots on Sunday, someone who has been seeing our work happen in the community and wanted to offer themselves for our support. It's a family-friendly activity, and we're going to be, working on writing haiku poetry, and some may be a tribute to Henry Ossawa Tanner or Henry Ossawa Tanner artworks, and working on special cupcakes and things like that. We do a bunch of programming with the Strawberry Mansion Learning Center. This is where we have hosted our previous Any Day Now Creative Writing Workshop series. We also host tea nights. So this is our council person, Jeff Young, who's visiting us on tea night. Once a month, we bring, Javon, Javon and Salil, who are the leaders of the Teen Leadership Committee, convene about 20 to 25 young people to have sort of like an intentional mentorship driven space on Friday nights. This is myself and Kevin Upshur, the director of the Strawberry Mansion Learning Center. We just had an amazing neighborhood storytelling event. As we sort of, our work is also about the role of preserving Black heritage and how do we get more people involved in it. So this was a neighborhood storytelling event that invited people to share different stories about, the history of the neighborhood and the spaces that meant something to us, and what it takes to really like preserve and sustain those spaces. these are the things that we got coming up now. I would say, other than this, I think something that we're really excited about as an organization, and specifically for this sort of Philadelphia County, Bucks County connection, is we are working towards the in February of 2026, we are hosting a cultural heritage fair across the greater Philadelphia region. We're going to be bringing a number of different initiatives that are all doing different work, um, and highlighting them, introducing them to new audiences, building engagement, but also figuring out a pipeline of people who volunteer, support, donate, honor, and help sustain these spaces.
Oh, great. And it looks like we have some questions that popped up in the chat. Um, so what is the timeline for the renovation of
Yeah.
the
So
house?
the timeline currently is we are working to secure an architecture design group who will be leading probably like a 6 to 7 month design process to figure out the sort of finalized renovation plan, revitalization plan. The outcome of that is that at the end of that, we have construction ready documents. We also have a comprehensive cost estimate. And then that's when it gets really, we have to find the funds to do that work, right? And that's going to be a process, you know. I think if many folks here are probably aware of some of the new challenges of funding for um, a number of things, but in particular, sort of like Black heritage organizations and spaces. So there's the work of finalizing the sort of like redesign and revitalization. Um, but there's also the sort of work of like, all right, what's the comprehensive capital campaign needed to finalize the construction?
Another question that came in, I think might ask you to elaborate, but Brian asks, how far are you from reaching the goal of saving the house? Do you have early estimates?
So the house is stabilized now. Now, in terms of its renovation, we are like the design will, like I just sort of like mentioned, right? Like we have designs, we have the construction level documents, and then it becomes how do we actually achieve the resources which we have named as a about $1 million to be able to fully restore this property. So the sooner we can raise those funds, I think the sooner we can kind of begin that finalized work. So there is like a bit of a dance there, right? Of figuring out those things. But while we do that, we're going to continue to do a bunch of programming and engagement in the neighborhood. We continue to work with a number of our neighborhood partners. So the work that we're doing in sort of like lifting up the legacies of the Tanners and making connections with young folks and elders in the neighborhood and letting them know what's happening is we're doing that now, you know, and certainly as we go through the summer, we look forward to more partnerships and engagement on that.
Yeah, no, it really is. So it it really sounds like such a s- vibrant organization, cultural community, and yeah, it just seems like once the building is ready, it'll really just launch you guys into like greater heights. So yeah, does anyone else have any other questions? I have one more. I'm just wondering, so is the house being used at all for any of the programs or
So
yeah,
we have the opportunity to do things outside the house, you
okay.
know, working on a special project to really um, find a way to activate, you know, the house even in the midst of our sort of like renovations. And so we got some things coming, but for the most part, we're working with our close partners. Strawberry Mansion Learning Center is only about literally 2 blocks away.
Got it.
And then there's, you know, the Manda Recreation Center down the street. There's also the Hank Gathers, which is on the other side of the bridge. Um, there are the churches that are in the direct neighborhood. Like we have a community partner network that represents over, you know, about 20 different organizations that are all sort of working across the spheres of faith, family, freedom, arts, health, and education in the 19121 and 19132 zip code. So it's also a collective wave, you know, that we're trying to build here because it's not just about the house, right? It is about investing into what the legacy of the Tanners
Mhm.
have done, and that was invest into community.
Right. Yes. And the networks there. Yeah. Great. Well, Jen, did you want to wrap things up or?
Sure. I just want to thank everyone. Thank you so much, Chris. Your enthusiasm about the Save the Tanner House project is just contagious, and I will include all this information in a follow-up email to everyone tomorrow. So, if there are not any further questions, I'd like to thank everyone for attending. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you, Abby. Don't forget the exhibit, Yesterday's Dreams Are Real, will be on display until July 27th. We have a gallery talk with artist Sid Carpenter on June 19th. And then on July 9th, we have another uh, gallery talk with Abby and Laura. So if you have not been to see it, it's fabulous. There's so much to explore. So thank you again, everyone, and hope to see you soon. Bye.